So we spent this season talking about some of the most famous climbs in Tour de France history, but there's a few we haven't covered that we saw in this year's race. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Coming up on the show, there was a comment he made in the first week that made me chuckle, where he says, I was questioning today whether I should have stopped last year.
And this was unusual. They put them in the post-stage press conference together. So you had the yellow jersey with Pogačar and you had the stage winner, Wellens, and you had them sitting next to each other. And for the first time in what felt like a long time, you had Pogačar kind of, cracking a few jokes.
I don't think there's many people, that have won the Tour that would have liked to have raced against Tadej Pogačar.
Yeah.
I would never have been able to compare with him.
Yeah.
He's a different animal. Welcome to another episode of Café Aficionado. This episode is sponsored by CAMS, the UK's leading accident management company, helping thousands of cyclists get back on the road. So, as usual, I'm joined by Graham Wilgoss. Graham, good to see you again.
Your lead out man.
Lead out man.
Been
out carrier
out in France, leading out elsewhere. But it's good to be back with you. Good to be back on your team.
So, Graham, since we last spoke, we've both been at the Tour de France in different capacities, and it was a long one, wasn't it?
It was a long one, but it was a brilliant one. It was ballistic from the start, wasn't it? The way it was raced. I know that you and I probably think about it slightly differently in terms of like the Tour as a whole, because Tadej Pogačar completely dominant from start almost to finish, but he didn't have to be to finish. But I also think about it as like breaking it down into 21 one-day classics, and every single stage delivered to a greater or a lesser extent, because it was just ballistic racing from start to finish. In terms of that, I found it a really exciting Tour. I don't know.
I mean, it was very captivating. And there wasn't a day that we watched the Tour, I watched the Tour this year, that I wasn't anticipating something. And I think that was the beauty of it as well. Even though there was, for me, the second half of the race was a little bit anticlimax. The first half of the race was, it was jaw-dropping in some cases. And there was something that happened every day. There wasn't a boring day in the Tour de France this year.
Yeah, absolutely right. Even because you get those sort of transitional sprint stages, don't you? Where it's kind of like, you can kind of sit back and just kind of let the race wash over you until the last 10K or so, where the sprint trains will start to form, and that's where the action happens. But there was something every single day.
There was.
Alpecin de Koning kind of went in and started to dominate the first week, but then obviously you had Jasper Philipsen crashing out tragically in the green jersey. I mean, they'd had the best possible race to that point, taking the yellow jersey with Philipsen on day one, and then Van der Poel taking it off his back, his teammate taking it off his back, stage two, and then just totally topsy-turvy, and then having to go to plan B because their number one sprinter crashed out on stage three. But then you saw Van der Poel animate the race in ways that I haven't seen someone animate the Tour de France before. Going from that, I mean, I'm thinking about that break from the gun on, I can't even remember which stage it was, but it was in that first 10 days of racing. But even that I thought was extraordinary, getting to the 10 days before having that first rest day because of Bastille Day. And so you have to race on Bastille Day. It's a French institution.
Yeah, and so much was built around that first week and the importance of it going across northern France, how decisive it was touted that first week was going to be for the third week of the GC. And we saw, the prominent GC guys constantly at the fore. Jonas never moved off of Tadej's wheel in that first week. Tadej was just on another level throughout the race, I thought. We saw great individual performances. Mathieu van der Poel, Ben Healy, and it was captivating from start to finish.
Healy was a real breakout star, wasn't he? He kind of
former Team Wiggins rider.
Former Team Wiggins rider, of course. Did you drop him a line? Did you say congrats?
I didn't pester any of the riders this race because, of course, the other one that I was desperate to reach out to was Oscar Onley, who was remarkable. Fourth place overall, in contention for the podium right to the end, and hung unexpected as well. As good as his performances were in the Tour of Swiss before and other races that we've seen, Tour Down Under most notably. But at 22 years of age, and let's not forget, I mean, I kept saying it during the Tour actually, in the different dynamics. If you took Tadej Pogačar out of the race, Jonas is by far and away the best rider of the rest of them. And in Jonas's case, even though he's won 2 Tour de France's, he's unfortunate that he's come up against probably the greatest cyclist that's ever lived. And would have been going for his 5th or 6th Tour de France win now. If you take Jonas out of the race, the rest of the field is wide open. We saw the rise of Lipovic, young German, the first German podium since Jan Ulrich, and Oscar Onley, a phenomenal performance. And that podium race was wide open. We saw the resurgence of a Frenchman in Vaclin.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've talked about a Frenchman in the GC battle. So there was so much to talk about on different levels, but the gap between Tadej and then Jonas and then the rest of the field is a gulf, really. And it's interesting. I was asked a question. I'll ask you this question. Where can you see the next Tour de France winner coming from who beats Tadej Pogačar? Tadej came onto the scene very young and beat Roglic. And since then, it's never looked in doubt, other than the 2 years that Jonas won. But Tadej seems to have really progressed since then. And you're trying to think of a young rider now who's going to break onto the scene and beat Tadej Pogačar and take his mantle away from him. I think Tadej will have to retire from the sport before we see the next Tour de France winner.
And the question really is, who's got the capacity to do it? Who's got the team behind them to do it as well? And so you've got Remco Evenepoel moving from Soudal Quickstep. That was kind of rumoured in the first few days of the Tour, and then it just sort of started to feel like it was confirmed. And then in the past week or so, as we're recording now, it's been officially announced that he is breaking his contract early with Soudal Quickstep, and he's off to Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe with Florian Lipowitz and Primoz Roglic still in the last year of his contract there. So you start to wonder, okay, well, are they starting to put together a team that's capable of challenging too? So if that rider to challenge Pogačar doesn't come from Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe, I think it can only come from
his own teammates. I think there's three of them.
Almeida,
Del Toro, and Ayuso, who are all UAE.
Or do Visma-Lease get it right? But UAE are cleaning up with the best young talent. Del Toro, given his performance at the Giro, yes, he didn't win it. Simon Yates played it very smart, and that final sort of spectacular stage that made the difference on the Col de Finestra was the one that broke him. But you can see Del Toro getting better and better, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
But I just wonder. It was a fascinating tour, just from the fact that Visma-Lease was sort of trying to find the chinks in Tadej Pogačar's armour early and kind of testing him. And I know we'll get on to the fact that annoyed him too.
Was how vocal they were about what tactics they were going to deploy.
Yeah.
And they kept trying the same tactic until they kind of gave up on that, really, and tried a different tactic, which eventually won them two stages. But I was surprised just how vocal they were, and also that how, when they did get the opportunity for Jonas to salvage his tour and win a stage, which was the second stage Arensman won up La Plagne, he sat in the wheels a bit too long, and had he gone too long, 50 metres early, he probably would have won the stage.
Yeah.
Which I found strange.
And we'll get into that. We will get into that. Just tell me quickly, because you were in the US, I was following the tour stage by stage in France. How did you find it? Sort of, you were on West Coast timeline?
Yeah. So I was getting up at 4:30 every day to start watching pretty much Kilometre Zero.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of how the stages were raced this year as well. I mean, they were out the blocks, weren't they, every day? In the first 2 hours.
You couldn't take your eyes off it.
No. I mean, there was one day they averaged, for the first hour and a half, 54 kilometres an hour. So it was riveting to watch, and there was a lot of different dynamics going on, particularly in the second half of the race.
Yeah.
As a reason for getting up early and watching it was, which I was interested in, was whether Milan was going to win green or not, because Tadej seemed to be his closest challenger, and as he was in all three competitions. And the first intermediate sprint, which Milan started getting his act together, and Little Trek in that second half of the race. But yeah, I mean, it was riveting, and I was watching it. So I was watching it from 4:30 every day.
That green jersey competition, you're right. Yeah. It sort of made the intermediate sprints more important almost than they've ever been, because Milan and Little Trek had to be at the front and collect those 20 points. Each and every time in order to stay competitive, so that Pogačar, I mean, he didn't do what we all thought he might do, which is go on and win 2 or 3 more stages in that final week. And had he done so, the points competition would have been a lot closer.
Yeah, it would have been. And Tadej looked like he could win all 3 jerseys at one point.
Yeah, and if he had chosen to have done, maybe he could have, but he seemed quite tired towards the end of it.
Tadej.
He seemed like he was
so that was another thing I noticed with Tadej. He seemed bored the second half of the race, certainly in the last week, and his demeanour in interviews changed. And I mean, it's hard, isn't it? We expect so much of him, and I think our expectations, especially after Hautacam and the mountain stage, the mountain time trial, I think we anticipated him just doing the same on every summit finish, was going at the bottom, that big acceleration, and riding away and taking more time from Jonas.
Yeah.
And we didn't see so much of that the second half of the race.
Yeah, it was like he was a lot more controlled because he didn't have to do it. He'd got his stage wins. He'd got the time gap.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily comfortable because you had Visma Leesebike and Vingegaard sort of looking for ways to put some or to get some time back on him. But in the end, it did feel like a bit of a marking job. But
they also regrouped after the loss of Almeida, which was a huge loss, and we didn't know which way that was going to go.
Yeah.
But I did think that the two guys that rode out their skin in that second half of the race, Tim Wellens was phenomenal. He got staged as well, man of the match. And Nils Pollitt, the way he rode
early as well. He would ride early, and particularly when you had like Sivakov, Pavel Sivakov, sick, and you'd see him going out the back of the peloton. Sivakov certainly last year was one of the riders that Pogačar would rely on the most. We're going to get into the climbs where it all, a lot of the action happened. Before we do, let's do the socials. So hit follow on Café Aficionado, wherever you get your podcasts. Watch us on YouTube at Sir Brad's Cafe, and join us on all your usual social platforms, also at Sir Brad's Cafe. So Brad, 3 climbs, as we say, that we want to focus on today, and we're going to try and do them in race order anyway, as they appeared in this year's tour. Hautacam, Mont Ventoux, famously, and the Col de la Loze, and all for different reasons, played a more or less significant part in how the race ended up. Certainly last time they were ridden, if not so much this time. But Hautacam, let's start with that, because that was a real kind of dominant showing from Tadej Pogačar. The first time the race went into the high mountains proper, the first all category finish, and Pogačar, he was a rocket man that day, and it was a kind of incredible show of dominance from
it was
the yellow jersey.
It was the stage we were all anticipating, because we thought, the stages that had been previous to that, where Tadej had attacked Jonas and Jonas got dropped and then came back, and did Tadej wait, and then of course they'd challenge and tackle the sprint together. That was the day we were anticipating, in the sense that those climbs suit Jonas better, and that we thought, but from the foot of that climb, they did a Poggio style lead out into it.
It did have a bit of a Milan San Remo.
Yeah, well, that's the nature of what UAE do now, is they really hit it hard.
Yeah,
and we've seen that a few times. We've seen it, in the Dauphiné, particularly. And when they do that, they did it actually in the approach to the Mur de Bretagne, and Tadej didn't attack. But that was the one where we were going to see them head to head, both in their own domain. And Tadej, his acceleration and the length that he keeps it going. I don't think, there isn't a man in the world that can stay with him when he's doing that. And the minute he gets the gap, he tends to kind of recalibrate, slow down, looks around, checks his gap, gets himself settled, and then goes into that sort of famous Zone 2 band that he talks about.
It's
so
almost
much.
like he switches up a gear again, isn't it?
And then he proceeded to take 8 seconds a kilometre on that climb from Jonas.
Yeah.
And interesting, he was throwing his gels away in the bits he didn't need, because he was obviously fueled up at that point.
Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of us noticed that changed to the second half of the race, that he was still on his aero bike at that point, which is painted white. The paint obviously weighs 500-600 grams. And the second half of the race, for the mountain TT onwards, he seemed to be on that black bike, which has got no paint on it. It was interesting, but and did he get the record up? He got the record, other than he didn't get Reese's record. Is that right?
I think that's right.
So we broke Armstrong's record.
And a little point of correction from me there. I said yellow jersey, but he was, of course, in the world champs, rainbow bands. And so seeing him, that in itself was a kind of a nice little, sort of visual memento as well, kind of crossing the line in the rainbow bands and kind of.
There was a few things he did like that. When he won the stage where he lost the jersey the day before to Mathieu van der Poel by 1 second. That was one of the reasons he didn't attack on that last climb, was because they wanted to lose the jersey to give it to Van der Poel, because they knew it was close. So he could win his 100th career win in the World Champs jersey, which is quite something to be that calculated and that confident in those moments. And Tadej was, he personified that this race. He did lots of things like that. He gave the King of the Mountains jersey the first week to Tim Wellens, his teammate.
It did feel like a little bit more of a mature ride from him.
It was the most mature ride I've seen him in previous years.
And
Tadej's really come of age from that point of view.
Yeah, and then the sort of experiences that he's had before, like with Hautacam, I mean, it's significant in the back of his mind. I do wonder whether it was, okay, well, look, you lost a minute to Vingegaard the last time that you raced this climb at the Tour de France together. And as you say, we're all kind of expecting it to be like, this is going to be the battleground. This is where Vingegaard's going to start to test him, because we think these longer, higher all category finishes really suit Vingegaard.
Yeah.
Possibly a bit better, but he kind of blew all that out the water and blew it out there early.
Yeah, I mean, the takeaway thing for me on Hautacam at that point, watching that race, was, I've been quite reluctant in calling him possibly the GOAT of all time.
Yeah.
And I've been defending Eddie Merckx from that point of view quite staunchly. But once he won on Hautacam, there was no doubt in my mind that this guy is certainly on a par with Merckx, if not better, but that his performances are Merckx-esque now.
Yeah.
And I was my thought process straight away when he won on Hautacam was, this is a guy who won the Tour of Flanders in April.
Yeah.
Was in a winning position in Paris-Roubaix and finished second.
Yeah.
Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Amstel Gold, won the Dauphiné. And there he is winning the hardest summit, well, one of the hardest summit finishes in the Tour de France by a considerable margin in the World Champs jersey. The versatility to do all those races is not to be, it's phenomenal. It really is. It's mind blowing what he's done this season.
Totally. Yeah. So 28 seconds slower than Rees on the climb. So Rees does still hold that record. Let's get in. Looking back, as we were with Bjarne Riis there, a little bit of the history of the climb too. It was Miguel Indurain coming second, just 2 seconds back, and putting time into all of his GC rivals that made part of the history that's made Hautacam memorable. Big Mig's day, obviously mountain stages. Well, Big Mig could do anything, but he was a real kind of dominant force.
Yes, yeah. Well, Indurain was, it's funny how people kind of seem to remember history or rewrite history. That is. So someone said there was a question whether Indurain would have won as many tours as he did had they not had the time trials they had back then in their race.
And that was 1994. I'm thinking of that.
Yeah, and Miguel, if you go back and watch some of them climbs, particularly that Hautacam from '94 where he's with LeBlanc.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a display of destruction what he does. LeBlanc's the only one who could hold onto his wheel. But and even the Riis era, when Riis won, lots of people will sit there and go, "Oh yeah, but you can't really count that year in '96. We all know what they were doing." And they tend to talk like that as well. People that make those observations, but it is part of the history of the race. It's in the same way at that time, the speed these guys are doing now, you can't compare it to 100 years ago because of the bikes they were on. But it's part of the history of the sport, regardless of what they were doing at that time. Riis has still climbed that climb in the time he has climbed it in.
1994 for LeBlanc, a 263 kilometre day. Riis, 1996. 28 seconds faster.
Yeah, and he might have had a hematocrit of 65 and all that, but it's regardless of anything, he climbed it in that time, and it's part of the history of the race, whether we like it or not. But Tadej's performance this year, and Tadej didn't even look out of breath when he went across the line. That was what was remarkable. Tadej seemed to ride within himself every opportunity in this tour. And we say, there's a maturity about him now, which we haven't seen in the other years. And there was also, I doubt for 1 minute that this was in Tadej's mind, but for us watching the race, I think there was an element of uncertainty with Tadej this year because of his spring campaign. So we was like, is that going to affect his Tour de France? Because in previous years, no one else has been able to do that, ride the spring campaign that he has done. And was that going to affect his Tour de France performance? And we were all waiting for that chink in his armour at some point during the race.
And yet last year he did the Giro and went into the Tour and just seemed to be so dominant.
Yeah.
Do you, as a GC rider, is it sort of accumulative in that way? Look, I've had a huge season last season.
Normally, maybe it does, but with Tadej, he seems to break the rule book. One of the discussions around Sepp Kuss and his lack of form in recent years was because he did 3 Grand Tours in one season. The year he won the Vuelta, and the effect that has had on him since then. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe it is. If that is the case, then he came back to some sort of semblance of form this year and rode great. Except, but Tadej, Tadej won 2 Grand Tours last year. And had he ridden the Vuelta last year, he probably would have won it. And it doesn't seem to have affected him.
It doesn't. And
Wout van Aert also. Wout van Aert in the last 14 months has done the Giro d'Italia last year, the Tour de France. He crashed out the Vuelta when he was racing really well. He rode the Giro this year and pretty much won the Simon it on the last day. And he rode the Tour de France this year and came to he won the hardest stage in the Giros also this year, in the Strada stage.
One of these riders, you just feel sort of feel like the more races they do, the better they.
And he was fourth in Flanders, fourth in San Remo, fourth in Roubaix, fourth in Amstel Gold this year.
So they need that.
So it works different for different riders, I think. But it's just it's a new age of cycling, I think, as well, a new way of racing. One of the things that struck me about the Tour this year, the information came out, was the carb intake. Now, this sort of new fueling strategy, and particularly Ben Healy's consume something like 1,000 calories, 1,000 grams of carbohydrate on the bike.
To be able to process that and be able to use it,
it's phenomenal. And so we're seeing a new age of cycling and a new way of racing, particularly, as I've said, the starts these days. The crashes, the amount of crashes.
Hugely impressive tour for Healy. Just it's worth doubling down on.
And as a character as well. He seems so laid back. Seems like such a lovely guy.
Nearly won on Mont Ventoux. Having taken his stage win in such an impressive fashion, 40 kilometers out, kind of doing the classic. You almost all know that everyone knows that it's coming, because that is Healy's territory, and he will just kind of get up to speed and he will just kind of diesel engine it straight all the way in.
When he wins big, and he always wins in the same manner. These long solo breakaways. It's phenomenal.
But he came so close to doing it on Mont Ventoux. And it was Valentin Paris-Panther.
No, but what was funny about Ventoux was the lad who popped up at the last minute.
This is what happened. So I was on the mountain, and so I would have missed the last.
So he popped up. No one had seen him the whole climb.
Right.
And he rode up to that group when they were all playing cat and mouse. And gave him a 40-meter lead out.
Right.
Says, "Come on, get on my wheel," and then peeled off. And then Paris-Panther, and he was given the credit as the one who was the decisive person. So Van Wilder. Never heard of him. I remember there used to be a film, didn't there, of Van Wilder?
Ryan Reynolds, But
this guy, it was phenomenal. It was a great bit of entertainment, and it looked like it was a spectator on an e-bike who just joined in the race. Because there was a couple of days like that where a decathlon guy rode down the finish straight and got barged off, and there was a few incidents like that. Kind of
that was one of the Milan wins. Jonathan Milan wins where you had that.
So that's kind of how it looked at that, because no one had expected Van Wilder to be there. On a climb of that length and that severity, but no, it was amazing. And the thing with Ben Healy is as well, he just seemed to, you thought taking the yellow jersey when he did and winning the stage that he did, that's his tour. But he never gave up after that. He every day gave his all.
And Ventoux isn't the sort of stage that you'd expect Healy to be up there and challenging for either. And it's the sort that everyone almost expected Pogačar to do the same thing that he did on Hautacam, but he didn't. And it was still a proper GC fight between Vingegaard and Pogačar coming up those last sort of few kilometers on Ventoux, and the race was really on, and it was a question of, okay, well, at one point it was a question of, is this going to be a win for the break, and is it going to be a fight between Paris-Panther, Buitrago and Healy, or is it going to be Vingegaard and Pogačar are going to come and take them by surprise and sort of take them in the last few hundred meters?
And what was interesting was that those summit finishes, was it Col de la Loze, Hautacam and Mont Ventoux, those were the stages where I thought Tadej was really going to go for it in the same sense that he did on Hautacam, to make amends for what happened a few years ago, because those are the climbs that Jonas dropped him on.
So it's like putting a few ghosts, laying a few ghosts to rest, kind of thing.
And he didn't push home on those. He rode with, well, I didn't say rode within himself. He rode as you would expect someone who's leading the race by 4 minutes to ride and not risk anything.
So you mentioned the Col de la Loze there, which we'll come on to in a sec. Before we do, I'm just going to plug one of our early episodes with Chris Sidwells, who of course we had in to talk about Tom Simpson, and who famously and tragically lost his life on Mont Ventoux racing in the Tour. But make sure you listen to that one if you haven't already. Worth going back and listening to again, even if you have. So Col de la Loze, fascinating climb, absolutely brutal. So it's up to Courchevel, and then it's a track that was only paved, so that it is sort of roadworthy for road cyclists. For the 2020 Tour, that was when it was first introduced. Miguel Angel Lopez taking the stage win that day. I loved it being up there. It was fascinating, and it was a proper kind of mountain day in that even with the weather, it started off sunny, and then by the time some of the riders crossed the line, and it was Ben O'Connor for Jaco Alula who won it from the break that day, and it just seemed to be Ben O'Connor does it when it's horrible and when it's hard.
Yeah, whenever Ben wins, he wins big. And I was really impressed by him. His persistence through that tour, particularly how it started for him. Day one, he was in the front group and went down heavy over that speed hump when someone had gone down.
Yeah.
And he spent the next few days after that nursing his body through, covered in bandages. Had some pretty bad days after that point. And it would, again, very easy for him to climb off in a style of Remco if things aren't going his way. But he persisted. He was in every break in the Pyrenees, every break in the Alps. He really came, really tried his hand, and he got his reward on the Queen stage of the race. I think the only thing at that point, that was a tough day. Primoz was having a wee when he attacked.
Well, Roglic went out to win it, didn't he? Roglic was sort of in the break, went out in the earliest break, and then you saw Florian Lipowitz going away. And the funny thing about those two being on the same team was they weren't riding together; they just seemed to be riding for themselves. So you had all these little sort of subplots folded into, and then you've got this sort of historic battle between Vingegaard and Tadej Pogačar, and the famous quote from Pogačar last time round. 2023, last time it appeared in the Tour, Pogačar going, "I'm dead, I'm gone," and that was he said afterwards. He felt like that had been played back ad infinitum again and again, to the point where he was kind of sick of hearing it. And so, although he at no point did he look like Vingegaard was going to put any time into him, and he looked perfectly safe on that climb, Ben O'Connor's ride was so impressive that the gap, he went out, got the gap, and he maintained it all the way up, and it's a long old climb.
Yeah, no, it was. Roglic was a funny one for me in this whole tour. It was the most relaxed I've ever seen him in a Grand Tour. From day one, he lost some time. There was some funny comments about him not wanting him to be at the Tour. He doesn't care about the Tour. And he kind of found himself in fifth spot. He looked like he could have gone to the podium at some point. And it was at times it was even questionable whether he was actually helping Lipowitz or not.
But it didn't feel like it, did it? It just felt like they just happened to be wearing the same jersey.
Yeah.
And Lipowitz actually did tremendously well to kind of be able to manage that and find a way onto the podium.
Yeah, and that Col de la Loze in particular, that Lipowitz was either riding off the front or off the back that race. But that was the one where Onley most impressed me on that climb, the way he rode.
Just being able to stick with...
I don't think people appreciate just how hard some of those ramps were on the Col de la Loze.
Yeah, brutal. You're sort of talking 20% towards the end.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And it was a long old day, and they raced from the start that day, didn't they?
Yeah. And Onley, again and again, just seemed to be able to hang on to Vingegaard and Pogačar's tail. Yeah. And even if he couldn't, he would find a way to kind of make his way back. So even if he was distanced, if he was gapped, he would just kind of maintain almost the way that Geraint Thomas would, and is famous for doing so. Worth a mention for G in his last tour.
Yeah, I felt for G sometimes. I mean, there was a comment he made in the first week that made me chuckle, where he says, I was questioning today whether I should have stopped last year. But he got through it. What a legend that man's been.
Yeah.
And he was in a couple of breaks, only particularly the Mur de Bretagne day.
Yes.
Where he got belted.
Which we will come on to, yeah.
But G, I mean, his presence, I wouldn't underestimate how much his presence would have lifted that team anyway during that race. Yeah. And it's going to be, it's a loss to the sport now. He's gone.
One last mention for Ben O'Connor, and in particular his DS Steve Cummings, who I saw at the end on the Col de la Loze, and Steve was just kind of it was like he took it in his stride. He was like, it wasn't like, because he's never massively up and he's never massively down.
No,
he's
not.
Steve. He's
but
really
I wouldn't
consistent.
underestimate his presence in that car. I mean, we spoke about it on the pod, didn't we?
Yeah.
The master of the breakaway. And always thinking about process and outcome, and some of the insight he gave us in that podcast, which people can go back and listen to if you haven't already. He's the ideal man you want in that position. Second DS up there in the breakaway. Those few little comments when Ben's coming back to the car for a bottle or whatever, or on the radio. telling him to bide his time. Just watch for Roglic, watch these guys. This is a good opportunity. Roglic is looking to have a wee at this point. And you can just imagine how that dialogue went. And in those moments, how much he would have assisted. Steve will take no credit for that.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, if I was in that position, there'd be no one else I would want in my ear or behind me than Steve Cummings. And it worked out, because that's a classic way Steve would have won a stage.
Yeah.
As we spoke about.
Curious, though, that Vingegaard didn't try and attack a little bit earlier, because you felt like that could have been the stage that not necessarily saved his tour, but it would have sweetened it if he could have taken away a stage win, especially if he could have taken away a stage win on the Queen's stage.
It's funny, isn't it? Because he went from saying into that third week, and they were quite vocal about what they were going to do. He was willing to sacrifice second place on GC to try and win the tour, you know, and that was what we all wanted to hear. He did try that. He tried it particularly on Ventoux. He went early, but when it came and it looked like, you know, he's not going to get rid of, because Tadej attacked, didn't he, on the foot of La Plagne that day, and Jonas managed to stay with him, and Tadej didn't throw another attack in after that. You thought that Jonas, if he was willing to sacrifice everything and lose his second place on it, I'd like to have seen him in that last kilometre and a half throw everything into winning a stage. Yeah. And he nearly got him on the line.
Yeah.
And they could see him. And I couldn't understand why one of them, or certainly, you know, for me it had to be Jonas, didn't open up his sprint 50 metres, 100 metres earlier and just really go for it and win that stage.
Yeah,
it was a strange one,
but it was almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. And he must have felt like Pogačar always had it in him to take him on the line, so he didn't just want to be a lead out man.
I think might have been an element that he knew, had he gone, Tadej would have gone with him, and he would have been taking Tadej to the stage win. Yeah, it could have been an element of that.
Yeah,
but those little things, you know, turned out to be a little bit of an anticlimax in some ways. But and that's our expectation on what we expect of these guys. But also, we're hearing this from the teams themselves, that this is what their plan is. You know, we're going to throw it down tomorrow. We're going to risk everything. We're going to put riders up the road. We're going to try and isolate Tadej. We're going to show him, and we had a week of that.
Yeah,
where it didn't really work. You know, every day it was like, okay, maybe they'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But then we also questioned at times when they were saying things like that, like, you know, because, you know, there was one day in particular. What was the day where they said that this is what they were going to do? They were going to isolate. We're going to, you know, put bodies on the front, and Sepp Kuss was riding on the front as Jorgensen's getting dropped. So Sepp Kuss comes back to Jorgensen, and it was all went a bit pear-shaped from that. They were hurting each other.
Yeah.
And the one they were supposed to be hurting in Pogačar, they didn't manage. But, you know, fair play for giving
it a go.
Yeah.
Plenty more to get into, Brad. We're going to take a quick break.
So as a pro rider, Graham, spent lots of my time training out on the open roads. It's fair to say I had my fair few run-ins with cars and a few accidents. One in particular I can remember was the Tour de France champion, 2012, heading out locally on the roads in Lancashire, and got hit by a van that was coming out of a petrol station.
Like a lot of us, it can be impossible to avoid.
So there are always risks riding your bike out on the open road, and that's where our sponsors come in, CAMS. Cycling Accident Management Services help cyclists get back on the road, whether you're a pro rider, a weekend cyclist, or a commuter. They work with local cycle shops to provide quick and hassle-free bike and helmet replacement. And they provide full legal services for any claim you might need to make. And if you've been injured, CAMS will help with all the rehab, including physiotherapy and psychological support to get you back on the bike. But what I love most about CAMS is that they are for cyclists by cyclists. They support the cycling community through partnerships with cycling events, pro athletes and men's and women's junior cycling teams. To find out more information about CAMS and other road traffic accident claims, visit the CAMS website or click the link in the show notes.
So Brad, bit of a new dawn of cycling this tour feels like, doesn't it? Like it's again that transition into racing, Grand Tour racing, like we haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's like the Tour de France rulebook has been ripped up, and anything that has gone before us and how tactics are deployed and what the usual scenario is for racing a stage like that, which give us a way of predicting how the stage is going to pan out, seemed like it was the polar opposite every day, and I think it was, you know, baffling to some people that have watched the tour for many years, and you know, this isn't I don't understand what's going on here. And a particular thing that springs to mind is when Jonas crashed on one of the fast stage starts, and in most cases, the race would stop and the yellow jersey would stop the race because his biggest rival was, and Tadej was trying to do that and even telling the Visma team to slow down, and they wouldn't. They carried on racing, and Jonas was out the back for a bit. Things like that are kind of going, we haven't seen this before. And that's why it felt like a sort of new dawn of cycling, that a way we haven't seen before.
Well, it's stage 15, wasn't it? So and we saw those kind of non-stop early attacks. It was fraught, it was fractious, a real kind of another nervous start to the stage. And you've already had 14 stages before it that have been raced absolute gangbusters from the start. And then, as you say, you've got Vingegaard going down, getting caught behind a crash, and 3 teammates out off the front, and in particular, Wout van Aert and Victor Campenaerts, who would go on. Well, Campenaerts very, very close to contesting the stage, went all out, but it was Tim Wellens who, as we've already touched upon, extraordinary tour. But the most extraordinary thing about that, certainly those early stages, was the fact that it was Tadej Pogačar, his biggest rival, taking command and going, no, we're going to wait for Jonas.
Yeah, as you would expect, but things like that were confusing a little bit, and it may be, added to the beef that we were hearing at the end of each stage that was sort of rumbling on between Visma and Tadej.
There's a few points.
And I would say it was between Visma and Tadej, not Visma and UAE, because it seemed to be Tadej that was,
and not necessarily between Tadej and Jonas either.
No.
Not between Pogačar
the
and
rest of the team.
Vingegaard. It was almost like the team were trying to get under his skin, because there seems to be this kind of underlying respect between them,
definitely,
no matter what else happens.
No, it seems that way, doesn't it?
And in the history of sort of Grand Tour rivalries, that's not always the case. There's a real kind of bitterness there.
In some cases, in some places, I did think that was to the detriment of Jonas. Really, there was almost too much respect there. And some days it looked like Jonas was just happy to finish with Tadej and would stick his hand out and they would congratulate each other. But at the same time, it was maybe him being diplomatic and keeping that peace between them, because there was a thought that what the last thing they want to do is piss Tadej off, because if Tadej's pissed off, he's going to make a big statement. And so there was a point of pandering him a little bit and keeping him in his box, because they didn't want him to, just.
But they did get under his skin. So Bottlegate on stage 7, where you had Matteo Jorgensen in particular. Pogačar said that he blocked him. So Vingegaard's Visma Lease Bike teammate, was the one that Pogačar singled out. But I think the whole team went up the right-hand side at one of the early feed stations so that Pogačar couldn't get his bottle.
Did they do it on purpose, though?
Well, exactly. Did they? Didn't they? Was it a case that? So Grisha Neerman said afterwards, one of the Visma Lease Bike DSs, he said that maybe our helpers need to stand further apart, so the guys on the side of the road holding out the bottles, if they stand,
I mean, all that sort of stuff gave us something to talk about, didn't it? But
it's like, okay, they can't expect.
But from that, it brought out a different side to Tadej, that we hadn't seen before.
A little bit spikier,
and there was some days he was almost disinterested in his post-race interviews. There was one stage in particular where I think it might have been Mont Ventoux, but one stage where it was all out to the finish, and Tadej, there was a shot of him on his home trainer, as he was every day, warming down, just messaging on his phone, and it was like, and then we saw, I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but it came over the TV quite a lot of the radio messages from Tadej to the team car, where he's asking how his girlfriend had done in the Feminine. He was encouraging Wellens the day that Wellens, how does he look? And he's, and it was really interesting to hear just how vocal Tadej was and how much of a leader he's grown into being.
And he seemed to be
almost the patron of the peloton in a totally sense.
And that Wellens win, that seemed to be the first time in a few days that Pogačar started having fun again, because they put them in, and this was unusual, they put them in the post-stage press conference together. So you had the yellow jersey with Pogačar and you had the stage winner, Wellens, and you had them sitting next to each other. And for the first time in what felt like a long time, you had Pogačar kind of, cracking a few jokes. Just bringing it back to Neerman's comments, one of the things that Visma Lease Bike said after that stage was UAE can't expect us to roll out the red carpet for them. We're in a race here. So all these little tactics, all of the, trying to get under his skin and the little sort of breaks off the front in those early stages to test him, and Jorgensen going or Van Aert going and UAE and Pogačar sort of feeling like they had to cover. That is all part of it. And that's totally legitimate. And I agree with that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one of the other things that led into Hautacam, which was interesting, particularly some of the commentary around that, was you remember the day before Hautacam, Tadej's crash, and there was some commentary that as to why Jonas didn't profit from that, and because if he lost the Tour by 15 seconds, how decisive would that 15 seconds he could have took?
So it was one of the ex-mobility riders, wasn't it? Who was a sweeping right-hander and
came over the top of him. And Tadej hit his arm quite hard on the pavement.
So clipped the rider in front of him, went
and
down
they decided to wait, but as it looked on the telly, and Tadej came back. But
right thing to do.
Definitely the right thing to do. Yeah. As was displayed in the rest of the Tour.
Yeah.
Because of the dominance that he displayed after that, and if they need Tadej lying on the floor to take 20 seconds off him, which is all they would have took, then I don't think that would have been the right thing to do.
So earlier in this episode, we started to get into Superbagnères and La Plagne and Thymen Arensman, team Ineos, his 2 victories, which difficult tour for Ineos for a number of reasons, but it put a great big sticking plaster on their
individually
tour.
For Arensman it was phenomenal, and we hadn't seen that Arensman since the Vuelta that year where he won a stage. I think he won to Sierra Nevada, didn't he? In that year.
Very good. Yeah.
And was 4th overall.
Yeah.
And of course was riding for DSM then, or whatever that team was at that time, whatever sponsorship.
Yeah. And so stage 14 on Superbagnères this time, and La Plagne.
Yeah, and so came, it was a remarkable tour for him really. But Superbagnères, I mean, he took his opportunity in that valley when that climb, and I think when he was out there, we all thought that once the race opens up behind the Tadej Jonas battle, that they would close him down. But he maintained his gap and was strong all the way to the finish, and it was a phenomenal win, really. And again, another one who you would have expected at that point, take the rest of the tour off, because when you win a stage win like that, the emotion that's attached to it and the coming of age and to winning the tour. But we saw him then on the last stage then. In La Plagne doing the same thing,
backing it up.
A great individual tour for him.
I tell you what helped there was the stage was shortened, wasn't it?
So it was interesting. I don't think it changed much of the race. Those shorter stages just seemed to be more exciting than some of the longer ones.
Yeah, totally. And again, that was another one where you just sort of felt like, well, Pogačar and Vingegaard are going to wind him in, or is he going to stay away? And it sort of becomes this fascinating game of cat and mouse.
Yeah, and that seemed to be the story of the last week of that tour. Really was this anticipation that Tadej's just going to keep doing what he did, like on Hautacam, and he rode a very mature race from that point on.
Yeah.
I also think there was some rumours about him having a bit of an illness, a bit of a cold in that last week. Yeah. The weather wasn't great in the last week. He also rode with an arm warmer on for the last, very Michael Jackson-esque, one
on the left arm,
which was as a result of the injuries he sustained from that crash.
Side he went down on his crash. Yeah.
But no, he rode phenomenal, and then the way he rode in Paris to finish off the race, I mean, was just again. It reminded me, going back to, Eno's 2 wins on the Champs-Elysees in the yellow jersey, the way he just attacked the race, and I don't think any of us anticipated him getting ridden off the wheel by Wout. I was pleased more than anyone. Wout's, I'm a big fan of Wout. But it was great. Great entertainment.
Montmartre was extraordinary.
We spoke about that, didn't we? The camp episode.
Yeah.
And was it the right decision to make, breaking away from tradition and as a sprinter stage of the tour, and how horribly wrong it could have gone? But my God, it was the best stage of the race.
Do you think so?
I think it was the best stage of the race. Yeah, I think it was.
It was such a weird day because all the build up was the talk about, okay, instead of doing the traditional finish on the Champs-Elysees and the kind of processional into Paris, and you drink your champagne and then you do a few loops of the Champs on the cobbles, and then you have a sprint finish, this big bang at the end. But instead what we got this year was 3 climbs of the 1 kilometre long Butte de Montmartre, and a neutralised race, so it sort of felt like a bit of a damp squib to start with. So when the announcement of the overall, the general classification times are going to be taken at the foot of the climb, and so you've got this kind of strange dynamic of it's a race that it's a stage that doesn't really count at all, and then that transforms into this electric 3 laps of the Montmartre and Pogačar risking it all because it's wet, because it's cobbled, and he wants the glory of winning on the Champs-Elysees in the yellow jersey, and he's willing to risk his whole race in order to be able to do it. And you've got 5 riders sticking with him.
And in doing that, I think he made a mockery of that and made the rest look stupid because, how decisive that could have been. I mean, we saw, this is what's crazy about Lipovic, took 10 seconds on Tadej Pogačar where they stopped the time. So he actually took 10 seconds off Tadej on the overall, but lost 13 minutes that day.
Yeah.
And I thought, which was ridiculous, because had it been any other race, a Tour of Catalonia, a Tour of the Basque Country, 4 days of Dunkirk, that wouldn't have happened, and that last stage would have been decisive. So if you're going to make a stage like that, and I know it rained, and that added a different dimension to it, it's part of the race, and it has equal importance as every other stage. Because why not just neutralise the race at the foot of La Plagne when it rains? If that's the case, and you have to race to the end.
Well, yeah. What's the point of having it in at all then? Yeah. I mean, as it was a thrilling individual stage, as mentioned, almost all of them were.
And Tadej, kind of being in the front and risking all. Was what we wanted to see.
Totally wanted to see. And the crowds on Montmartre as well. And it felt like it was kind of Paris. All the fans on the side of the road are so used to seeing what you see with the procession, but it was a totally different atmosphere, and it was like Paris kind of re-embracing the race again.
Yeah, and I cannot to neutralise the race when they did because of the risk, and the riders have ridden 3 weeks and come through all that. It was no more dangerous and no more important than any other stage in that first week where riders were scrapping for seconds. So I think, and it throws in, if you have a cobbled stage, why not neutralise the race on the cobbles? They're as decisive as every other stage in the Tour. So I was against the neutralisation. I know it's raining, but I thought it was a bit excessive to neutralise the race when they did. Which was a long way to the finish line.
Amazing ride from Wout van Aert, but it was a course that truly suited him as the one sort of true classics rider, give or take, left in the peloton. It would have been fascinating to see Wout versus Mathieu van der Poel on that final stage, wouldn't it? Had Van der Poel not pulled out with pneumonia earlier in the race. Particularly the form that he was on too, because he'd won the yellow jersey, he'd won his stage, he'd gone on that ridiculous break from the gun and took it all the way.
Which was a bet.
Was it? Is that right?
Well, so the word was that he... So Rijkaard, was it Rijkaard he was with?
Rijkaard, yeah.
Had said, the only chance I've ever got of standing on a Tour de France podium is by winning the Combatif prize one day.
Yeah.
And so he said, well, let's attack from the start and get out there and we'll get you that. And that apparently that's how it played out.
And so he got most combative.
And it was incredible, really, to do something like that, But again, as I said earlier, the rule book of the Tour de France, to see 2 riders out there from the same team.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't choose to go. I mean, and I felt for that lad who was with Mathieu because, to be out there, because apparently he was swinging from the start.
Was he?
Yeah.
And he completely buried himself as well.
5 times during the stage.
Right, I missed that.
He vomited 5 times during the stage. I mean, just, if you chose to go out on a 5-hour training ride with Mathieu van der Poel, most people would say no. So to go out there in the Tour de France stage and do that, it was phenomenal.
It was, and Van der Poel hung on to 700 metres or so from the end. So he almost brought it home.
He did. And then there was a stage where X won their first Tour de France stage.
Yeah, in Toulouse.
And Van der Poel attacked from behind and finished 3rd on that stage. But apparently when he attacked that day, he thought he was in the lead of the race because of all the confusion with the race radio and the noise. And he didn't realise there was 2 guys up the front. So he thought he was going for that stage win as well.
Yeah.
And again, so all these things, it was a
different story every day.
Every day,
yeah. The whole kind of Norwegian contingent, and because that was Jonas Abrahamsson's stage, wasn't it? Yeah. Out sprinting the Jaco Lula rider, the Swiss time trial champion, whose name escapes me. We'll come back to that. We'll put it in the show notes, but. It was
Schmidt,
just
wasn't it?
Schmidt, thank you. There was something new every single day, but that kind of gave it a real festival feel.
Yeah,
the Norwegian fans afterwards, X's victory. Something new every single day. just going to wind it back to Superbagnères, because we've mentioned that we made the sin of mentioning that without mentioning Pippa York from our episode 4, and riding as Robert Miller, of course, back in the day, 1989, beating Pedro Delgado in a stage that featured the Tourmalet, the Col d'Aspen, and the Périssord before finishing on Superbagnères.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty much followed the same route as when she won that stage, and I think it delivered as well in terms of entertainment. But that, from the minute they hit the Tourmalet, the race was in pieces. We saw the abandonment of Remco Evenepoel, which we'd.
You called it, didn't you?
I did call it. I just saw him the day before. He's never been caught in a time trial. I know it's a mountain time trial. I know it's a little bit different, but
and it's
he really struggled in that time trial.
Yeah.
And we'd seen him the day before get dropped at the start of the climb, come back on, limit his losses on Hautacam, still retain third overall that day. And it was just, the day after, he never seemed to get into his rhythm, did he, on that time trial, and then got caught by Jonas. And then I watched him in the warm down tent after. He looked demoralised. Completely demoralised. And this is a guy that's got, the expectation, double Olympic champion, the weight of a nation on his shoulders. He would have known by then he's leaving the team. So you wonder how much of a distraction, how much of an influence that was on him, thinking, sod it, I'm done here, I'm climbing off. And it was a shame to see, because Remco is a class act and there was so much more left for him in that Tour de France other than this GC. But it was a shame. But
when you're done though. And he's had, like you say, the double Olympic champion. Before that, he'd finished third at the Tour. He'd won the time trial there as well. So he'd already had, by most measures, he'd had a superb summer.
He'd had a great. Yeah.
He then had the training ride crash in December.
So he was off for 4 months there with that crash,
and he was playing catch up ever since. And so it was a rush to get ready. He's come out and said he felt like he was always rushing to get ready for the next thing. So although you kind of need that goal, but it was a rush to get ready for the classics.
And it's funny that you kind of forget that, because the weight of expectation on him. Winning is a standard with Remco.
Yeah.
And there is no second place with Remco. So it was, I think maybe we put too much expectation on him, really, and I'm sure lots of people did, and he would have done himself, because when he did come back, he won early in the season in Flèche Brabançonne. He won the stage in the Tour of Romandie, he won the time trial on the Dauphiné, he won the first time trial on the Tour. So, you think by seeing that Remco's at his best, but clearly, for a GC battle going against those two, let's not forget, he was a little bit undercooked coming in.
You've been in that position where you felt like, you're kind of trying to play catch up, and the next thing is just coming far too soon, whether it's having to concentrate and prepare on the next race, or whether it's having to go away to altitude and prepare for altitude, be ready for altitude camp.
It's in particular, I remember 2013 when I was, I'd won 2012, won the Olympics, and I'd had that really disruptive winter, being thrust into the limelight. And then I was down to do the Giro that year, so I was aiming to win the Giro. And I never felt that I missed too many months in the winter pissing around. I was in great form at the Vuelta Giro, but my head wasn't in it. And I found myself climbing off. My knee had gone as well. I'd had a crash on the running to Pescara one day. So I've been in that position.
It's like all these little things start to compound. And it reaches the point where you just sort of feel like, well,
and that does tend to shine a light on an athlete who. And I was one of them. I'm great when everything's going my way, but it's dealing with the adversity that you face during that race. And Remco had 1 or 2 spills. He fell off at the Dauphiné, didn't he? He had a crash on one of the runnings one day in the Tour. He also is probably one of the reasons why he's leaving is it time for a change as well. He's also not in a team that is, the sole purpose of that team at the Tour de France is being. I mean, we look at Tadej. The team's built around him. Jonas, the team's built around him. They went in with a double sort of pronged attack with the sprinter and Tim Merlier, who won a stage. And Remco, other than Perez Porret, whatever he's called, winning on Ventoux, he wouldn't have a team at his disposal that are going to keep him in the front every day. Remco has to do a lot of that himself. So I think, but what's interesting about Remco and signing for Red Bull, which is, I feel that the dilemma that they've got now, is Lipovic has now put his name in the hat now as the ultimate team leader of that team, particularly with Roglich's decline as one of the elder statesmen now.
So you wonder how it's all going to fit together.
Well, are they going to
be a two-pronged attack?
How do you now fit Remco and the Lipovic thing? And with them being a German team as well, with a German rider, it gives them a dilemma.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And you sort of feel like Lipowitz is stronger in the mountains, whereas Remco's...
Well, maybe on his day, Remco could be stronger than him. I mean, we haven't seen the best of Remco this year, and I think it's easy now to judge Remco on his performance of this year's Tour. But let's not forget, when he's at his best, he's a different animal, as he was at the Tour last year, and as he was when he won the Vuelta. But it's now an interesting dilemma as to which way they go now. Do they throw everything from the Remco, and Roglic has re-signed? I think Roglic has re-signed there. I don't think Roglic is too bothered because he did stay before the Tour. Now, I want to go to every race that Tadej isn't riding.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's racing with a freedom, and it's just it's kind of up to him what he does now. We mentioned the Périgueux there. We're going to get into that next. So Brad, Périgueux, and I mean it was Pogačar. The point of the race where this year Pogačar was really stamping his authority on it. Short time trial for this one, so a little bit different to when you raced on it and raced on the Périgueux in 2012. What are your memories of this one? Because Freemy went off the front, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, we went up the Périssord for the second day in consecutively. I sort of switched off over the top of the Périssord because I sort of saw that was my Tour done now. I'm going to win it. Although, that we've got the climb of Périgueux, but I mean, I knew I wasn't going to lose a bucket of time or the amount of time that was, and Froome was riding, and in him riding and me staying with him until he dropped me, we lost everyone else. I think we lost Pinot, and kind of I knew that Froome was going to take 2 minutes out of me or whatever it was at that point. So I mean, it was, but we, it was. It wasn't as decisive as it could have been, maybe, had it been early in the race. So it was a tough climb. It looked harder on the time trial this year, particularly the final sort of 500-600 meters. We must have done that bit. I can't really remember much about it and how steep it was because I remember it coming in ramps, and we finished on the runway up there. But another great finish.
So Pogačar won it by 36 seconds from Vingegaard. Vingegaard overtook Remco, which is, as we say, the sort of where you really start to think the cracks are appearing here. The first time ever that Remco's been caught in a TT, although it was.
And it was the day after Hautacam, wasn't it?
Day after.
And what was interesting was Tadej's choice of using a road bike. Jonas rode the time trial bike, and Tadej still had the fastest time at the foot of the climb by 4 seconds. So on the flat section of the time trial, Tadej actually took time.
No aero helmet, no aero bike.
No,
I don't think he even had a cycling computer. So
and what was interesting, I thought it was Jonas's best performance of the Tour because we expected him to lose more time, but he rode a really good race that day.
And a sort of an interesting point of the race to introduce a mountain time trial as well, because for some riders it would have been a bit of a break for the day. It was, okay, you've just got to get in up this sort of 10k climb, and then you've kind of got the rest of the day off.
I also thought it came very early considering the time trial we'd had before, and I thought it would have been better placed in the second half of the race, sort of the third week. But it was a new construction of the route. I thought it was an interesting route. I think the way the first part of the route was structured, it was weighted such at the front end of the race that it almost cancelled out the second part of the Tour de France. But
which is for the overall the kind of the shame of it, really. But it in a way it almost felt kind of leading up to it that those climbs were put in to kind of make Tadej Pogačar think twice about it. Okay,
there was an element of that, but if you're making Tadej Pogačar think twice about it, then what does that leave for the rest of the race?
And then what you got was more breaks off the.
But then we got different talking points, and we got different riders to talk about, and we got some interesting stories.
And the GC,
because it would have been even worse, I think, from a boring point of view, had Tadej dominated the Alps as well, and the Pyrenees.
So the stages where you'd expect him to dominate, and you expect it to be purely a GC race. It ended up being one for the break, like we saw with O'Connor, like we saw with Arensman. How would you have raced it this year? How do you think you would have done?
Well, in the current climate against the current crop of riders, not very well. I mean, it's hard to compare because it's such a different time now with the fueling, the way they're fueling and things like that, and
the way they're fueling, the way they're racing. It's not that kind of.
I mean, I would have been around. Visma would have suited me the way they race as a rider. I was very similar to Matteo Jorgensen in terms of how I raced. Maybe a better time trialist than him. I would have held my own, but I don't think there's many people that have won the Tour that would have liked to have raced against Tadej Pogačar.
Yeah,
I would never have been able to compare with him.
Yeah.
He's a different animal.
The UAE almost do it the way that Team Sky used to, but they do it a lot earlier in the race. So where you've still got kind of 4 or 5 lieutenants. Obviously, you had the extra rider, only 8 riders in per
what
team
we're witnessing is the greatest cyclist of all time.
Yeah,
in the making.
Yeah,
was he 26 now?
Yeah,
4 stage wins, 4 Tour de France GC wins. He's won the Giro. He's a phenomenal. I mean. You wonder how long he can keep this up, riding the way he does and in the manner he does, because he's won everything there is to win now. And other than winning things he has won on multiple occasions now, and doing it again, you wonder how long that motivation, that desire is there for him. That's the only thing. How long have we got Tadej for now?
Yeah, as long as he wants to be
around. And it's different for someone like Jonas because you're chasing someone.
Yeah.
So there's a motivation to get better and get better. But at some point, Jonas maybe now. I mean, where's he at now?
Yeah.
Last year he had the excuse of crashing in April as he did at the Tour de Basque Country, which was a horrific crash. And he was as good as he was at the Tour with that incident that had happened only months before it. So it gave us some hope that, well, imagine Jonas with a great season on full form. Can he challenge it? And the gap was even bigger this year. So it leaves us with the question of next year is, it's who's going to challenge Tadej?
He truly does seem to be the ultimate cyclist, doesn't he?
He is.
On which note, we should probably do our ultimate cyclist. The ultimate cyclist, then, Brad, brings us to the end of this particular episode of Café Aficionado. We've gone through the various components that we think make up what would be an ultimate cyclist if you could put all of these things together, from panache to heart to tactics to climbing. And so for this episode, because it is just you and I, we've brought in our researcher, Luca Unwin, for his official Café Aficionado debut on the mic, at least, Luca.
Debut on the mic, refereeing the final round.
But you have, of course, been our researcher extraordinaire up to this point. So it's about between you and I, this one, Brad, and the only facet left really is sprinting. And so really it's a question, I think, of who goes first.
It's easy, this one, isn't it?
This one. But we're going to do it anyway.
All right.
So the greatest sprinter
Mark
of all
Cavendish.
time. Yeah. Good. Luca, thanks for coming.
Can you put up a fight?
I'm gonna put up a little fight here for this one, because if you were to put Marcel Kittel up against Mark Cavendish, Marcel Kittel in his prime,
there's many like that though. Yeah, there is many.
Yeah, so you can make a case for.
Yeah, but
you would choose Kittel.
Longevity outdoes
Cav.
it. Longevity outdoes it.
Yeah,
and Cav won Milan-San Remo. Cav was world road race champion.
Yeah,
he won Milan-Turin.
Yeah,
I mean, so yeah,
Yeah,
you can't really put. Okay, I mean, there's would Cipollini in his era have beat Cav in a straight line? Jamoluddin Abdul-Jabbar, would he have beat him in his prime?
McEwen.
Yeah. So I mean, but in terms of overall and what Cav won and his longevity, he's unmatched.
Yeah, 14 stage wins at the Tour de France for Marcel Kittel. Won Scheldebriefs 5 times over, 4 times stage winner at the Giro, among
so you're going for Kittel,
other bits and pieces on his palmares. But he beat Cav once on the Champs-Élysées, and he won it. So he won on the Champs twice, didn't he? 13 and 14. 14 was the year that Cav crashed in Harrogate on the first stage, and so didn't make it to the Champs. So Luca, what do you think? Because Marcel Kittel in his prime was an extraordinary sprinter, and he was the first man really to come along and challenge up to that point, and utterly
he didn't
dominant.
challenge for long.
He didn't challenge for long.
Cav was, twice world team Madison champion, Olympic Omnium on the track. I mean, his versatility was, I don't even know the debate, is it?
It's the best I've got. So.
Well, I think that's the key, is he didn't challenge for long. like Brad said, it's the longevity of Cav that does it for you, really. 35 stage wins. It was, I think, the 2016 was his last one before then 2021.
Yeah,
2021. So to 5 years after everyone had written him off 5 times over,
just kept
to then
come
back and still win.
But the other thing with Cav as well, people don't realise, he won a prologue. He won a couple of prologues as well. He won a prologue in the Tour of Romandy. He won the prologue in the Tour of Britain one year. He was so versatile. I mean,
he could be versatile too. I mean, I'm putting up a fight for the sake of putting up a fight.
No, I mean, we have to, don't we?
I totally agree that Mark Cavendish should be the final component of this season's Ultimate Cyclist. So for sprinting, Mark Cavendish. So should just say here, Brad, at this juncture too, one more, and thank you to Luca for coming and playing referee. I'm sad.
Thank you for the valiant fight, but it's got to be Mark Cavendish.
Shame you didn't wear your MTN Quebec referee's jersey, really.
Yeah, black and white stripes.
But next time we get you into referee, we'll do that. Quick shout for the socials, Brad, and you can see how our Ultimate Cyclist is looking on our Instagram page at Sir Brad's Cafe. And tell us if we were right to choose Mark Cavendish. Could you make a better case? All of our listeners out there, can you make a better case for a sprinter to rival Cav at his peak? And let us know if any of our others are right or wrong. Were they good choices too?
So I've got 2 last questions for you, Graham, today.
All right, here we go. Other side of it.
Well, so firstly, what keeps you in love with cycling?
Yeah, great question. This, as I always think whenever we ask our various guests, the thing I love most about it, actually riding my bike, is being it's one of the few times that you get where you're not glued to a screen. Like, you've not got your laptop open, you're not looking at your phone the whole time. You are, like, wherever you are just out, and it's kind of it's, and particularly if you're with your mates, it's not like you've got that other distraction. It's, you're able to just kind of concentrate on following your front wheel and just seeing where it takes you.
Did you get the same feeling playing for Merton Town? Playing football
for Merton FC.
No, but seriously, did football give you the similar?
Totally. Yeah, and there's a kind of a very different competitive element when you're playing football. But it's exactly, you're absolutely right. It's the same thing. Of it kind of takes you out of, you can't just reach for your phone to check something, or you have to focus on the thing that you're doing. And so whether that is cycling or whether whether it's playing for Merton, and that's the thing that I love about it the most.
Striker for Merton, did you know that?
Not a striker, no. Centre mid, and then
in Carrick role, holding
in latter years, right back for the ones. But
right back.
And what was your go-to? What's your cafe choice?
Go-to cafe choice.
And what was your order?
Big fan of, so do a lot of West London based, our old stomping ground. Richmond Park. Always good to come out of Richmond Gate, and then there's a little, I think it's called the Richmond Hill Bakery. So Richmond Hill Bakery will do you an excellent little flat white, and I'm always a fan of the carrot cake or coffee and walnut.
I'll have to look at that one. I'll...
Look it up, mate.
I was in Richmond Park yesterday, right? I did a few laps at Richmond Park.
Well, there you go.
So
under the radar, many people notice you.
A couple of people did, because there's a cafe on there, isn't it? On the park.
Brad, thank you. Once again. That brings us to the end of this episode and this season of Café Aficionado. So, big thank you to Luca Unwin, our researcher for this season. Big thank you to our production team. Thank you to Ross Aitken. Thank you to Faye. And thank you to Toby for all your efforts behind the scenes, behind the mic, behind the cameras, and everyone else, for that matter, who has played a part in this series of Café Aficionado. And thank you to you, Brad, most of all, for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom.
That's what we're here for.
And then one more shout out for the socials. Wherever you are on social media, we will be there at Sir Brad's Cafe. Watch us on YouTube, also at Sir Brad's Cafe, and hit us up wherever you get your podcasts.
One more thank you, Graham. Again, it's been a pleasure this season, and thank you to you, all the listeners out there. And hopefully tune in for season 2.